They thought it was just another routine day in court. The judge, the attorneys, the audience, everyone was focused on the high-profile case at hand. Pam Bondi, the former Attorney General, stood confidently at the defense table, her expression unreadable. But no one knew that something unusual was about to happen. As the trial proceeded, the prosecution presented its arguments, the jury listened intently, and the judge remained poised. Then, in the middle of the proceedings, Bondi did something subtle, something almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. She made a small gesture with her hand, her fingers forming a brief but deliberate motion. At first, no one reacted. It seemed like a mere reflex, perhaps adjusting her cuff or brushing off a stray hair. But then, her dog, a golden retriever, sitting quietly by her side, immediately perked up. The dog had been a constant presence in the courtroom, an emotional support animal allowed due to a special request. While most people assumed it was there just for comfort, they had no idea it had been trained for something far more sophisticated. A moment later, the atmosphere shifted. The judge, who had been flipping through legal documents, suddenly froze. His eyes widened as he glanced toward Bondi's dog. A hush fell over the courtroom. The prosecution, the jury, even the spectators, everyone noticed the change. The silence was deafening. Then, the judge slowly placed his papers down and leaned forward. "Ms. Bondi," he said, his voice measured but firm, "would you care to explain what just happened?" Bondi, ever the composed legal professional, met the judge's gaze but said nothing. Instead, she gave the faintest nod toward her dog. That's when it happened. The golden retriever let out a single, low growl, not aggressive, but pointed. It turned its head slightly, fixing its gaze on a specific person sitting at the back of the courtroom. The murmur of confusion spread. Who was the dog reacting to? What had Bondi signaled? The judge, now visibly intrigued, followed the dog's stare. That's when he saw him, a man in a dark suit, sitting rigidly, his hands clenching the armrests. Beads of sweat formed at his temples. The courtroom security took notice. 2 officers subtly shifted their stance, ready for anything. Then, as if realizing he had been made, the man in the suit abruptly stood up. The moment his feet hit the ground, the dog barked sharply. Once. That was all it took. The security officers sprang into action, rushing toward the man. "Sir, stay where you are," one of them commanded. But it was too late. The man bolted, shoving past a row of stunned spectators. Pandemonium erupted. Lawyers ducked, the jury gasped, and the judge slammed his gavel. "Order! Order in the court!" But Bondi remained calm. She turned to her dog and, with another small gesture, signaled again. The golden retriever barked once more and then lunged, not to attack, but to intercept. In a stunning display of training, the dog moved strategically, cutting off the man's escape route just as the officers tackled him to the ground. The entire courtroom watched in stunned silence as the man was restrained. The judge, now visibly shaken, looked to Bondi. "Would you like to explain what just happened?" Bondi exhaled slowly and nodded. "Your Honor," she began, "this man has been under investigation for witness tampering. My dog was trained to recognize certain stress signals. When I gave the signal, she confirmed my suspicion." Gasps echoed through the room. The prosecution, who had previously dismissed Bondi's claims of outside interference, suddenly looked pale. The judge rubbed his temple, processing the revelation. Security officers frisked the man and found an unregistered phone, one that had been used to send threatening messages to key witnesses. The courtroom, once filled with legal arguments and formalities, had just become the scene of an unexpected takedown. In the aftermath, the judge praised Bondi's sharp instincts, but the true hero of the day was her dog. The golden retriever, unaware of the magnitude of what had just transpired, simply sat back down, wagging its tail as if nothing had happened. It was a moment no one in that courtroom would ever forget. The tension in the courtroom didn't fade immediately. Even as security led the suspect away, murmurs and whispers rippled through the audience. Some spectators were still in shock, while others exchanged theories about what they had just witnessed. The jury members shifted in their seats, glancing at one another as if trying to process the surreal turn of events. The judge, still gripping his gavel, took a deep breath. "Ms. Bondi," he said, his voice carrying a mix of curiosity and authority, "I believe we all deserve a further explanation." Bondi, ever composed, gave a small nod before kneeling beside her dog, gently scratching behind its ears. "This is Lexie," she began, "and she's more than just a service animal. She's been trained to detect deception." A wave of disbelief swept through the courtroom. The lead prosecutor, still standing frozen at his table, finally found his voice. "You're telling us that your dog just identified a criminal?" he asked, his tone skeptical. Bondi looked up, meeting his gaze evenly. "Not just identified," she corrected. "Confirmed." The judge leaned forward, interest piqued. "Explain." Bondi stood and straightened her blazer. "Dogs have an extraordinary ability to pick up on human emotions. They can sense anxiety, nervousness, even dishonesty through micro-expressions and changes in body chemistry. Lexie has been trained specifically to recognize certain stress signals. When I noticed that man shifting uncomfortably, checking his watch and avoiding eye contact, I had a hunch he wasn't just a nervous spectator. So, I gave Lexie a silent command." The prosecutor folded his arms, shaking his head in disbelief. "And you expect us to believe a dog can tell when someone's lying?" Bondi smirked. "She doesn't just detect lies. She detects fear, guilt, and malicious intent. That's why she growled. She sensed something was off, and when he moved, she knew he was a flight risk." The judge tapped his fingers on the bench, mulling over her words. "So, you anticipated this?" Bondi nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I had reason to believe someone involved in this case was engaging in misconduct. I just didn't know who, until today." The room fell silent. The weight of Bondi's revelation settled over the courtroom like a heavy fog. Then, one of the jury members, a middle-aged woman in a dark blazer, cleared her throat. "But why the secrecy? Why not report it sooner?" Bondi turned her gaze toward the jury. "Because if I had, that man might have gone into hiding. Instead, we caught him in the act." The judge considered this, nodding slowly. Then he turned his attention to the prosecution. "Mr. Reynolds," he addressed the lead prosecutor, "do you have any objections to this testimony?" Reynolds hesitated, glancing between Bondi, the judge, and the now empty seat where the suspect had been. Finally, he sighed. "None, Your Honor. In fact, I'd like to request an immediate review of any evidence linked to that man." The judge nodded. "Granted. Court is adjourned for a recess. We will reconvene after a full security sweep." With a sharp rap of the gavel, the session ended. But even as people began to exit, the air remained thick with astonishment. Lawyers whispered to one another, reporters scribbled furiously, and members of the public hurried to call friends and family about what they had just witnessed. Bondi, meanwhile, knelt once more beside Lexie. "Good girl," she murmured, stroking the dog's golden fur. Lexie wagged her tail, blissfully unaware that she had just played a pivotal role in uncovering a courtroom scandal. As Bondi clipped Lexie's leash back onto her collar, one of the security officers approached. "Ms. Bondi," he said, his expression still one of awe. "I've seen a lot in my years working security, but never anything like that." Bondi smiled. "Then you've never worked with a dog like Lexie." With that, she exited the courtroom, her loyal companion trotting proudly by her side, leaving behind a stunned audience, a shaken courtroom, and a case that would be remembered for years to come. As Pam Bondi and Lexie stepped into the courthouse hallway, the air was thick with murmurs and hushed conversations. Reporters who had been covering the case rushed to grab their microphones, eager to piece together what had just unfolded inside the courtroom. "Ms. Bondi!" One journalist called out, jogging up beside her. "Can you confirm whether Lexie has been involved in other cases before? Has she ever assisted in an active investigation?" Bondi glanced down at Lexie, who was calmly walking beside her, her tail swaying slightly. She turned back to the reporter with a slight smile. Lexie isn't a police dog, but she has been trained extensively. I wouldn't call this assisting in an investigation. I'd call it justice. The reporters continued their frantic questioning, their voices overlapping. Did you know that man was in the courtroom today? Another one asked. I suspected someone was watching the case too closely, Bondi admitted, pausing at the top of the courthouse steps. But I didn't know who until Lexie confirmed it. Another reporter, more skeptical, spoke up. Ms. Bondi, are you saying your dog is more reliable than traditional investigative methods? Bondi's expression didn't waver. I'm saying that instincts, whether human or canine, should never be ignored. Meanwhile, inside the courtroom, law enforcement officers had wasted no time investigating the suspect. A detective was already sifting through the confiscated phone, his face growing more serious by the second. He turned to one of the officers standing nearby. We've got encrypted messages here. This isn't just witness tampering. This could be part of a larger operation. The officer nodded grimly. We need to get this to cybercrime immediately. Back in the hallway, Bondi was about to step outside when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find the judge standing there, looking more relaxed than he had inside the courtroom. Ms. Bondi, he said, I've presided over hundreds of cases in my career, but I've never seen anything quite like that. Bondi tilted her head slightly. Are you about to tell me it was unorthodox? The judge chuckled. Unorthodox? Absolutely, but effective. He looked down at Lexie, who sat attentively at Bondi's side. I imagine this isn't the last time we'll hear about her. Bondi gave Lexie a small pat. I have a feeling you're right, Your Honor. Just then, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, an incoming call from a number she recognized. It was someone from her legal team. She sighed, knowing this case was far from over. As she stepped outside, the crisp air hit her face, and she inhaled deeply. The day had taken an unexpected turn, but Bondi was no stranger to high-stakes situations. With one last glance back at the courthouse, she started walking toward her car, Lexie trotting beside her. The golden retriever, blissfully unaware of I. The headlines she had just created looked up at her owner and wagged her tail. Pam Bondi smiled. Come on, girl. Something tells me this is just the beginning. And with that, they disappeared into the city, leaving behind a courtroom still, buzzing with the aftershocks of what had just transpired. As the courthouse settled and the news of what had just transpired spread like wildfire, one thing became clear. This was no ordinary legal battle. Pam Bondi had just changed the game, not with a last-minute piece of evidence or a fiery closing argument, but with something far more unexpected, a well-trained dog and an unshakable instinct for justice. The legal world had always been one of precision, facts, and arguments, but today proved that sometimes the truth isn't just found. In documents or testimony, it's sensed. Lexie, the unassuming golden retriever, had done what hours of cross-examinations and stacks of legal paperwork couldn't. She had exposed something hidden in plain sight. In the days that followed, the media couldn't stop talking about it. Was this the future of courtroom security? Could trained dogs play a larger role in uncovering deception? Experts debated the implications, some praising Bondi's ingenuity, others questioning whether this kind of intervention was appropriate in a courtroom setting. But one thing was undeniable. Justice had been served that day, and it happened in a way no one expected. As for Pam Bondi and Lexie, this wouldn't be the last time their names made headlines. Because if there was one thing today had proven, it was that sometimes the sharpest legal mind in the room isn't the one standing behind the podium. It's the one sitting quietly at your side, waiting for the perfect moment to act. And with that, the courtroom saga ended. But the legend of the dog who froze a courtroom in shock was just beginning.